You're watching Public Comment, Sean O'Connor's video diary vlog focusing on politics, culture, and self. Hello, dear audience. I hope your day is going really quite well. Around 11 a.m. this morning, you may know, former special investigator, and former FBI director, he was both, Robert Mueller III, Bob Mueller. He spoke. I got an alert on my cell phone, so I was excited for this, and so I kept my TV on, ready to have MSNBC play the little statement he was going to give. However, the damn smart TV that you can see in the background that my lovely wife bought, well, there seems to be something wrong with it. Specifically, the YouTube TV app doesn't appear to work because it literally just turned off without me even realizing, because I was typing some things up here and I just had it on in the background. I thought, okay, around 11 o'clock I would remind myself. Of course, it was past 11 and I hadn't realized it, so I missed it, but also the YouTube TV app had turned off. And I must blame our smart television, which was not behaving so smart, was it? Because the YouTube TV app that we have works on all of our other devices. So, and by the way, we got this TV at Best Buy, and I'm thinking Best Buy isn't the Best Buy anymore, especially because not only would this be the second defective item within a year that I've gotten from Best Buy, but also it's just not as enjoyable. You go there and there's so many items just that you would expect, you would enjoy to see there, that 10 years ago, if the items existed, technology's obviously advanced, they would be there, but they were not. And if you want these things, you're going to want to go online instead, which is fine. I don't hate online shopping, and I appreciate the fact that it does save a lot of time when there's a lot to be done. However, I do also enjoy that experience of physically going to a store and physically shopping, moving my body, moving my feet, walking, perusing the aisles, grabbing an item to touch and looking at it. Anyway, Mueller said really quite little today. I think the takeaway was that he made no effort to imply in any way, shape, or form that he viewed the president as innocent of any particular crime. Instead, he reiterated that the Department of Justice policy advises against indicting a sitting president. Politically, in the context of our current climate, I can understand Mueller's decision. However, I want to say that in a better scenario, right? If we think about the situation ethically, if we think about it in the context of raw, pure justice, the president should not be so protected politically. Especially, well, not ever. But when you look at the way that president is protected today, I do understand there's questions about preserving the legitimacy of a democracy and the will of a people, but in my opinion, not at the expense of breaking down the rule of law. That seems to me quite dangerous, actually. And I've talked about this before, and I'm not the only one talking about this, but I believe we are close to being in a situation where we're really going to need to worry about the legitimacy of the rule of law in the United States here. It bothers me, though, that the president, even if he or she, in theory, or I should say hypothetically, supposing indeed that the president absolutely committed a crime, right? The way it works today, as Bob Mueller indicated, and I'm not here to chastise Mr. Mueller. I don't have a negative thing to say here so much as I'm more concerned about the culture that required perhaps the political decision he had to make. But as it is today, the president is technically treated as someone who is above the law, despite, what do you call the word, de facto, right? The president is, in a de facto sense, above the law, even though he is not above the law de jure. Did I pronounce that correctly? It's one of those words I've seen written a lot, but I've not ever actually heard someone use the word de jure before. But I see that from Mueller's point of view, in the context in which he made his statement today, the idea is that the president is only going to answer to Congress. There's questions of re-election, but whether or not the president remains president has nothing to do with whether or not the president faces and is subject to more thorough actual justice and scrutiny for crimes possibly committed. So the bottom line is, this is just utterly unfair. And this is a perfect example of what is wrong today with American society. Special treatment for people who are lucky enough to know how to abuse the system to protect themselves from criminal and abusive and unethical behavior. I try not to get too caught up in my emotions here. However, this really angers me and upsets me and disappoints me and frustrates me. I hate to use myself as an example now that I think of it, because there are so many people who are victim to an unfair justice system where things come down on them too harshly. I think we think of drug offenses as a really good example. But I do think back to the thousands of dollars I was fined for speeding-related traffic violations. Now, I don't mean to color that in a pretty way. I sped a lot when I was about 23, and then I failed to appear at a court date, and my license was, I guess, technically suspended temporarily. And with that suspended license, I drove anyway. Not really. I was such an oblivious person in those days. I didn't even really conceptualize what was going on with respect to my legal driving statuses, and got pulled over for speeding again. And yeah, I lost my license and I was fined thousands of dollars. And that was a difficult thing to square away. I didn't drive throughout most of my 20s. And, that really annoys me, because the president, I mean, I'm not trying to minimize the mistakes I made with my driving problems when I was younger, but, these are traffic violations. Whereas the president, in theory, can conspire with a foreign enemy and obstruct justice. And if Congress doesn't care to open a serious investigation, the president can get away with this. I believe that the proper word here, if we're to be diction conscious, is travesty. This is an absolute travesty. And I do hope, dear audience, that we will not stand for this, and that we conceptualize if we're going to, or as we conceptualize what the future of our politics ought to be, that we include fairness and true equality under the law, just like the 14th Amendment suggests. Now, maybe there are interpretations of the 14th Amendment in language somewhere that says that it should only be subject to state law or state jurisdictions, or because I know it has to do with voting laws as they're implemented within the various states, but it does imply a legal principle in theory of equality under the law, and explicit equality under the law should be a constitutional principle if the 14th Amendment doesn't ultimately lead to that interpretation. And I believe we need to really drive hard and drum on that idea and bring that idea to life and practice in our time. I've been thinking a lot about the concept of the diary lately, really intensely for about the last day, just give or take a few hours. My thoughts on the concept has actually evolved quite a bit over the years. So I've been writing more or less since I was about 9 years old. I haven't been keeping notebooks all that time, right? Because I really tie my thoughts on diary and keeping and my thoughts on notebooks, because I've been keeping so many notebooks for so long. I've been doing that since I was about 19. And I just want to show you different kinds of notebooks I've had. This goes back to, this is old. Is there a date here? No. I didn't do a good job dating these, but you can see all the various notebooks I have here. This looks like, I just did a terrible job dating these. It's one thing just because the thought will come down to me so immediately that I just jot it down. I don't really always keep track of the date. This is a more recent one. You can see I really love my Moleskine notebooks. But I didn't always. See, I've got this kind of notebook back in the day, especially when I was younger. This is another one. You can see they take all different kinds of forms and shapes. I don't remember when this notebook keeping habit became in fact a habit, but I know around the time I was 19, that's when I really started keeping this practice of always. That's when it really became, it was some point in that time when I was 19. Around 2008, I want to say, I did keep a prayer diary for a while. That didn't last so long though. I'll show you one of the oldest notebooks I could find. Yeah, this goes back to about the fall or winter. So about fall 2006, winter 2007. So this would be, we're at 12, 13 years old, about. That was during my South Beach days when I lived in Miami. I'm actually tempted to throw the notebook out because I just utterly despise who I was in those days. And I'm not really in love with the things I wrote in there. But I'm operating under the concern that just because I dislike who I was doesn't necessarily justify destroying records of who I was. Indeed, there are things I'm absolutely tempted to destroy. Things I've written, videos I've made even. Some I have destroyed. But I've just not decided what my stance is on the question of records of oneself and thoughts that one should keep versus what is absolutely worth destroying. So I'm going to defer to you guys here and ask you for advice. What do you think the proper principle should be? I could certainly use your advice. So the concept of like how I take notes now in my day-to-day, that's something that, by the way, I'm not the only person who does this. My dear good friend Bernard Foyth, the poet and writer and philosophical thinker, he jots down things all day in his notebook. So it's a very good habit that people can possess. And I liken this sort of to diary keeping, in that you can sort of keep thoughts going throughout the day and then delve into them and articulate on them a little bit later. And it's just this idea of keeping the day with you, keeping your life with you. It's very interesting, sharing it. Yeah, so around 2009, that's when I really began investing in keeping a diary. And that's when I would really move back and forth between sketching notes on thoughts and writing things out almost more essayistically, more pronounced philosophical ideas. Around 2010, I pretty much abandoned the whole diary keeping thing, though, because I was more, I thought, of a writer exclusively, or in general, I guess you could say, as opposed to a diary keeper more specifically. And around that time I had published Lover's Other Stories in Words, self-published, and I was just trying to sell that and make that a success. However, that didn't happen, obviously. Around the fall of 2010, I actually did attempt something similar to this, like a public diary concept, though not in video form, in written form, but I failed to commit to that too. But I was just this notion, right, of tracking things we do, things that we take into our minds, movies, books, etc., that interested me, but I abandoned it. My mind was very all over the place in those days, as it was since I'd been a kid. And I was just terribly conflicted about what the hell it was I was doing with myself. At that point in time, I was just so convinced that I was supposed to be this best-selling writer. I was so convinced the book was going to succeed. And I just, damn cockiness, right? It can just destroy your life. So I had this sense of self as a failure, and as opposed to, trying to conquer adversity, I slipped into this all over the place mindset and tried to distract myself from bad feelings of being a failure and all of that. And it was therefore, so it was by around early winter of 2011. So I'm 26 at this point, I guess. 25. 25, sorry. Math and memory, when you're reading from your typed out thoughts, can get sloppy. I had grown really depressed, right? So the book was a failure. I had actually written a second novel that was also a failure. I just didn't like it. And so what I started doing around that time was actually something quite like this. I attempted a sort of vlog, internet live stream, talk show notion. I was using the Ustream platform. I did some YouTube videos, and to keep that going, I would keep notebooks like this and generate lists and jot down little thoughts, and I would draw from those. And it was really, therefore, in the midst, I believe, to the best of my memory, doing those sort of video log talk show kinds of things and trying to take notes throughout the day to do that. That's how this sort of notebook keeping that I do now really took off. And I'm trying to find my current notebook. I've got so many here it is. You can see I do love these things. I put down a lot of marketing ideas or things people say, questions, things I read, etc. There's that notebook though, but it's just something I really depend on to get through the day, is keeping notes. That's how that keeps me sane, because I'll have a thought and I'll think, I've got to write this down somewhere so I don't forget. And I'm finding more of this interesting relationship between that sort of note-taking impulse and a more artistic part of myself that wants to contextualize it and just really keep the flow of my life and have some sort of documentation of it. My fascination with keeping a video diary ultimately then, right, has to do with this interest in preservation of thoughts, as I've been saying, sharing thoughts, self-expression in general. Yeah. The thing about self-expression that's interesting, one thing that's really important to me, right, is the importance of not sacrificing self-expression. Especially with respect to, well, not in general, but I mean, I want to apply that to the question of what other people say is how you're supposed to express yourself. I mean, obviously, there's being more effective in how you communicate in a way that can resonate with people. So there are things we could do to be clearer or more evocative. We can be more knowledgeable and factual and things of that sort. Yet at the same time, there are aspects of style and experimentation that you really need to stick to yourself, right? And how you sort of daydream and contemplate about things and want to express it. But there's also the question of, if you're going to invest in these sort of artistic kinds of endeavors and you value the idea of benefiting economically, financially from that kind of pursuit, then there's a question of like, well, okay, but how am I going to market myself, sell myself, and, you know, more metaphysically, psychologically, what does it mean to really know what my value is, the value of my productivity here? And this is where the conversation about uniqueness comes in, right? Or as business folk say, marketers, finding one's niche or niche. That's something that's been driving me crazy for some time, because a lot of sources, a lot of people insist on having a narrow specialization or niche to market. But I've always been in this absolutely miserable debate of determining what my niche ultimately is. As I'm contemplating this vlog, even understanding what's the niche for this vlog. You know, is it a philosophical vlog? I don't want to go so far as to say it's philosophical. I am philosophical, but I'm not a philosopher, I don't think, because I really synthesize other people's ideas. I think other people have come up with the ideas in most cases better than I have. Right, so I'm more interested in thought process, thought reflections of experience, than just strict theoretical philosophy anyway. You know, and sharing all of that. So, right, maybe I'm supposed to call myself an essayist then, if that's what's going on here. But, you know, or personal essayist. But my theory is that if you're going to write an essay and describe yourself as an essay, then I think perhaps the most suitable thing to do for that kind of endeavor would be to like really invest in crafting a significantly revised, sharp essay. Whereas what I'm doing here and the sort of more diaristic impulse, yeah, it's true, I'm going to jot down thoughts and then fix them up before I share them with you, take a peek at them. But I don't know, I'm really striving for this interest in balance in having a sense of a raw thought. Not so raw that it hasn't at least been vetted in some degree and that it doesn't have any structure. So not this pure stream of consciousness per se, but a sort of navigated, directed kind of stream of consciousness type thought, you could say. Thinking out loud is an expression people have used, is really what I'm going for, and trying to do it constructively. So this really prompted me to understand my interest in public diary, video diary, as opposed to just thinking about all of this as blogging in general, right? So I've got to ask myself, what exactly kind of vlog is this? What's my niche? And must I have a niche? And that's where I did come up with one thing that I thought could distinguish me and make, sort of begin to think about what my niche was, my niche focus. I call it wide and deep, thinking freely, wide and deep, as opposed to the narrowness that comes with specialization and the whole niche thing. But the irony here and the joy of all this, I think, is that thinking wide and deep and trying to see the broad, holistic way of thinking about things itself can become specialized and niche. So I'm experimenting with this new tagline, thinking deep and wide, providing fresh air for niche specialists. I don't know, does that sound pretentious? I'm always paranoid of sounding either really stupid or really pedantic and pretentious, and I'm not sure if it's one or the other, but that's what I've come up with so far. But while that describes the essence of my product, I think that I need to conceptualize what kind of vlog this is categorically, right? So that's where this whole video diary terminology really started to solidify in my mind. Thinking about, marketing, what it would mean to market this. And that, though, led to this semantic paranoia where I started thinking, do I call this a vlog diary or a diary vlog or a video diary vlog or just a video diary? And I know it sounds really silly. It's just the way I am, though. I actually spent hours on my phone yesterday at night Googling, what's the best way to describe this kind of concept. Not to much avail. And that has me set, though, on, at this point, I like the terminology video diary vlog. I know you may think I'm just so pedantic. It is what it is. I am what I am at this point, though, until I figure out how to say things in a way that both express what I want to say without making me too pedantic. Anyway, maybe fastidious is a better term I like to say. I mean, I'm not positive with the way I'm presenting this right now that it's the perfect thing, but I do like just saying video diary vlog because it's direct in saying exactly what kind of vlog this is. But I don't know. Maybe I could say it another way. Maybe I need more clarity yet. But that's where I am. Beyond that, I've been thinking actually about the structure of these video diary vlogs too. That's a really important thing to me, concept of structure. Something I quite lacked in my younger days. And so that's where I've been developing this idea of what I call the thought scan. And do these thought scans based on the things that I'm most interested in. So for example, I'm really interested in my news and politics and culture. So I make sure that as I sort of have my topics of things to contemplate every morning, that I get my news and politics. And of course, I'm also really interested in the self, so I make sure to introspect and incorporate that into all this. And I actually have a list of questions that I ask myself and things to really give this a sense of shape and direction. There's just one last thing I want to say today, and I'll be done. In my last vlog, I did lament the war in Afghanistan. My friend Raheen Ambrose inspired me to read up on Yemen since then. Right? And it makes me think about how Afghanistan is not the only war or military entanglement that we Americans find ourselves involved in. So the gist of what I learned today was some of the history and the context. I used my good old this textbook, The History of Modern Middle East by William L. Cleveland and Martin Bunton. This is a textbook that I used for my class I took in modern Middle Eastern civilization or contemporary, I forget which word it was. So that was helpful. I'd also, if you're really interested in learning a little bit more about the crisis in Yemen, to check out the BBC. There was a really helpful article there. They have several. What I really didn't get much of, what I need to learn a little bit more about though, is exactly what the Houthis in North Yemen want versus what the folks in South Yemen want, and what really motivates their fighting. I understand that part of the conflict is whether or not, forgive me, I can't quite pronounce his name, Abdurrahman Mansour Hadi, the former president, or he's still sort of the president of Yemen. He's the president in exile, though the government in his name is apparently still functioning, sort of. But I don't really know, again, the nuanced policy debates in Yemen. I understand that Saudi Arabia and Iran appear to be, competing for influence over the country's politics. I know that we in the United States are involved, offering support to Saudi Arabia, that children have died as a result of this, that people continue to die as a result of this, and that it's all quite unfortunate and something we probably want to try to find a way out of. And I would end it there then for today, and want to thank you, dear audience, for taking the time to go inside my mind today, and hope that it was indeed a bit of fresh air from wherever you were. And I look forward to chatting with you tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.